So that's a good segue into this Rising segment from a couple days ago that I just checked out. There was actually a surprisingly interesting debate and a really good showing from Briahna Joy Gray, who continues to just absolutely kill it on Rising. I really do take joy in watching her, just dismantle these right-wing talking points by a guy like Robby Suave. Great work by Briahna Joy Gray. Great work. It always pisses me off when you see some people on the left and they're like, she's not left enough. Like, she's not, pure enough. So therefore, we're going to cast her out into the fucking sea of deplorables or whatever. Bullshit. Briahna Joy Gray makes such great sound left-wing arguments, and it's really a great thing that she's present on this show, that her voice is given a platform via Rising, and that she's here to push back on a lot of the just bullshit talking points that come out of a guy like Robby's mouth, as you're about to see in this video. It's called Libs of TikTok accused of soliciting threats against children's hospitals employees. And again, she does a great job here, just masterfully dismantling some of the right-wing talking points coming from Robby here, and also just exposing his kind of hypocrisy and the hypocrisy of the right-wing position in general. So I thought this was awesome. Looking forward to hearing your reaction, Zach.
A new piece from the Washington Post, Taylor Lorenz, takes aims at Libs of TikTok, accusing the popular conservative web account of encouraging threats against employees at children's hospitals in Omaha, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and Boston for providing gender-affirming care to trans teenagers.
According to Lorenz, Twitter executives are facing internal pressure from some employees to respond more aggressively to the account, with one employee insistent that it's, quote, only a matter of time before someone gets killed.
But the pressure, Twitter's facing increased pressure because vis-a-vis this article, the Washington Post is putting pressure on them. There's a little bit of like you're creating a story here by writing about it. Look, obviously, there should not be violence or threats against a children's hospital or anywhere else. I frankly don't think that people are necessarily responsible if you're for criticizing an institution. Then other people, because of your criticism, make threats or do crazy things. Like, you are not necessarily responsible for that. Is your criticism, the question should be, is the criticism fair? Is it right? Is it warranted? I would characterize some of the things Libs of TikTok has said as not fair and not warranted. But this article talks about, much of what Libs of TikTok does is just publicize videos and things that other people are doing. That's true of the teachers, who talk about who are bragging on TikTok about the kinds of subjects they're going to talk about with their kids. And the Libs of TikTok is highlighting this, and then people don't like it, but it's not hidden camera or anything. Right, now, it is a little bit different with the children's hospital, where Libs of TikTok actually did do some kind of undercover work. And look, if you listen to those phone calls, the phone call with two different employees of this hospital, you would absolutely think from listening to these, to what the operator said on the call, that the hospital does hysterectomies for kids much younger than 16. That's a literal quote. Now, the hospital said we don't. Those people were misinformed. Okay, fine. I think it's a legitimate dispute, but I don't think I think it's very unfair to say it's just like sicking harassment against the hospital for having done that.
So the issue in the original Libs of TikTok tweet was that it took a clip of someone talking about the services available at Boston Children's Hospital. It did not mention hysterectomies. And quote in
the original one, yes. But this is the national, yeah.
But then the title, the words above the tweet misrepresented it. So the first round of this conversation was about Libs of TikTok's responsibility in spreading what I think is much more credibly described as misinformation. And I think you have to start there, because that's the trickle down of all of this. The fact that there being bomb threats against a children's hospital, the fact of individuals receiving, and the Washington Post articles talks about at least one employee who has gotten a number of death threats from within a 50-mile radius of his home that has caused him a lot of concern. That is a trickle down effect of people believing, whether or not it's true, that this is something that goes on at the hospital. Now, I don't know what is true or not, but the hospital has represented that the two people that responded on those phone calls as saying that hysterectomies were available to people underage were not involved in patient care and were not accurate. And I do think ultimately it could be a good thing if hospitals start to firm up their policy and their messaging around these sorts of things as a result of this scrutiny. However, obviously, I think people are going to have to take a really long, hard look in the mirror who are critical of gender affirming care for people underage, if in fact they end up causing harm to real living human beings because someone goes out on a limb and kills somebody, it's just really going to undermine your argument that you're really looking out for the welfare of kids if ultimately you result in a children's hospital where people are being treated for childhood cancer and any number of things gets bombed.
What if Libs of TikTok?
That's a great point, by the way. These people that supposedly care so much about children. Oh, we're just concerned about the children. So let's make death threats to a fucking children's hospital. Let's intervene in the business and affairs of a literal children's hospital and create a massive fucking scare over this because we care so much about the kids. We're so fucking concerned about the well-being of children. Trust us.
Yeah, it's crazy. Two other quick things to add before we let it keep playing. When Robby was setting this up and he was fumbling a lot and fucking it up because I think he knew he had a dog shit argument, but it was his job to push back on this in some way. He was like trying to present it like writing about this made it a story. I was like, bro, do you know how the news works? Like, you are a fucking TV journalist or an internet presenter, whatever the fuck you want to. You don't have any idea how news gets created in the United States. Something happens and then they write about it, and that's how everybody finds out. It's a real fucking way to make a living. They also do it on TV and on the internet. And he's like, yeah, they really blew up this story, writing about it. And I'm like, yeah, because a bunch of people threatened to bomb children's hospitals, and the regular people want to know about that because that's called the fucking news, Robby. So I thought that was hilarious. Like, how dumb are you? You're like bitching about them for literally covering the news. That's your best bet. It's like, well, I think we probably should have let this one slide, guys. Only like 4 different cities had bomb threats against children's hospitals. That's not a coincidence. I mean, okay, Jesus Christ, guy. The other thing is he kept trying to interrupt Briahna when she was getting going on her fucking sting here. And I empathize with that a lot. And I think Gavin does too, because our least favorite thing in the world is getting interrupted.
What's your least favorite thing in the world?
Yeah. We're really good. We mute when the other one's
Sorry, what do you fucking say to me?
We have a really good rapport going on where we don't interrupt each other. And it's like both of ours. We fucking hate that shit. And so she fucking first she just puts up her fucking hands and you see her fingernails like, don't fucking do this. And then she like gives him the eyes. Like, if you try and interrupt me one more time, it's going to get raw. And I was like, I just felt that. So I wanted to point that out.
TikTok, Chaya Raichik, what if she gets death threats? Would we say the Washington Post shouldn't write about her? Of course not. I mean, she has gotten harassment.
All right, let's go back. We got, just in case you guys didn't hear
somebody.
this.
It was really going to undermine your argument that you're really looking out for the welfare of kids if ultimately you result in a children's hospital where people are being treated for childhood cancer and any number of things gets bombed.
What if Libs of TikTok, Chaya Raichik, what if she gets death threats? Would we say the Washington Post shouldn't write about her? Of course not. I mean,
yeah, because a public figure is totally the same thing as a children's hospital. Like, oh my God, that's just such a dumb comparison. But anyway.
She has gotten harassment as a result of the profiling of her being done by the Washington Post. Now, I would say that profiling, I didn't love single thing about it, but she has made herself a kind of important figure, and it is fair to cover her.
All important figures get death threats. You're allowed to criticize important public figures that are shaping the discourse, as Libs of TikTok absolutely is. A children's hospital is not the same thing. You don't just get to make death threats to a children's hospital because you hate trans people. Like, that's not the same thing as making valid criticisms of a literal fucking hate monger.
Yeah, and like, I'm not defending anybody that comes out and is like, tweeting that they are going to do crimes to the lady that fucking founded Libs of TikTok. But yeah, I think that when you're dealing with specific places like a children's hospital, an elementary school, or any kind of school really, daycare center, whatever, those are the kind of things when if there's a bomb threat there, everybody doubles the fuck down. Have you lived in this country very long? Violence happens like once every like 90 seconds in a mass way. Not, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just fuck around and be like, yeah, that's probably bullshit. Like, one day Timothy McVeigh's fucking spirit fucking spawn is gonna walk into that children's hospital. Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah, my argument wasn't that, I didn't say anything about Libs of TikTok or censorship or anything like that.
No,
all I said is that your argument, the case that people are trying to make, that they're the ones that are standing up for kids in being critical of transition related care is they're going to have a real death knell to their argument if it turns out that kids die as a consequence. So for me, as part of a movement that says they have a vested interest in the welfare of kids, I would be concerned of somebody acting on my behalf if they actually were detrimental to my cause. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Look, I've said, I think it's different in every state, but whatever the age of generally consenting to sex, marriage, etc. is, some places it's 16 with parental consent, some places it's 18. It is crazy to me that there would be a different standard for being able to agree to surgery. So whatever the standard is.
That's so dumb too, by the way. It's like it's just not the same thing. Having sex with a minor is not the same thing as a minor receiving medical care. Like, it's just not a valid comparison at all. I'm sorry. However you feel about trans people, you can't say that having sex with a minor should be the same age as a minor receiving medical care or treatment for an actual medical condition, which is observable and which definitely and clearly exists, that being gender dysphoria. And by the way, 97% of people who are transgender are happy with their decision to transition. It's not like, 50-50, like, let's hope for the best. No, like, this is clearly what the modern medical community has decided based on evidence as something that works as a treatment for this condition, whatever you want to call it. Clearly it works. So it's just not the same thing to say, this is the same thing as fucking a kid or having sex with a minor. Like,
yep.
At that point, then it should be between these individuals and their families and their doctors, and it's really none of my business, and I don't care. But I think it's clearly something people are interested in. It's a legitimate thing to report on and explore. And the Washington Post some in the mainstream media kind of want to have it both ways, where if you're exposing something or talking about something or reporting on something, you're inviting, you could get it wrong and you're inviting harassment, and like that's you can't do that. But the mainstream media does that all the time. So why they're protecting the idea that they're the only ones, they should be allowed to gatekeep on what's legitimate to discuss.
I think the question of what is legitimate to discuss has a lot more to do with the underlying subject matter rather than any particular death threat. I find it to be very curious that there are so many people invested in this issue despite the relative paucity of actual trans people in the country, much less trans people who begin their transition as kids. Just because something is rare obviously doesn't mean that can be a significant harm that people should feel passionately about and care a lot about. But I am really struggling with the idea, despite however I might feel about my child and their decision making. I'm troubled by the idea that there is a broad cultural permissiveness of teenage girls getting rhinoplasties, of boob jobs that happen for minors with parents' consent, that parents can consent to their kids getting married underage, including in situations that otherwise would be a statutory rape situation. We saw that. Who was that? There was a famous couple, reality TV show star that was 16 and married a much older man. All of these things happen. Do you remember that?
I do, because he was an actor. On Lost, which is one of my favorite shows. I can find him since I know the character and he played on Lost. Right, like I'm not saying it's right, but that sort of thing. And then people did talk about that, and that was a point of public discussion for some time. But I can point to a lot of different examples where parents consent to things that the broader public, even I, might not consent for my hypothetical child to do. But the politicization of this particular issue that has gotten to a point where people are making bomb threats against a children's hospital does strike me as Courtney Stodden and Doug Hutchinson. She was 16 and he was 51.
Right. And she later, I believe they ended up getting divorced, and she spoke out about how much she regretted that whole situation. But ultimately, there is nowhere near the level of outrage. The idea that Courtney Stodden's parents' behavior or bad judgment in allowing her to get married is a political issue on which we should vote and make political alignments in national elections or school boards strikes me as obviously insane. So what is going on here?
Your point earlier, just a minute ago, about the rhinoplasties and breast enhancement and all that. This is another case of, because I saw people on Twitter, people on the left or liberals making that point. And this is another case where like the conservative response will be your terms are acceptable. Yes, we could absolutely ban all of that too. Like they would be absolutely fine.
No, I think that's fine. But the question isn't whether or not you would, and we were saying this as well about the student debt cancellation. If I say no one objected to the PPP stuff, a lot of conservatives will say, well, I don't like it. Let's not do the PPP stuff. But that's not the point. At the time, you did not express anywhere near the level of frustration with the PPP loans, with Trump's tax cuts, any of that, as you are expressing now. The same with the Hooters stuff. Okay, if you all, showing kids pictures of kids with Hooters waitresses and all of that, and comparing that to the drag races, or the drag performances. If you are not expressing the level of discontent at the time, you can't retrofit and say, oh, okay, I'll allow this. I'll be mad at this other stuff too. You have to own up to the idea that this instance is provocative for you for unique reasons, and own that and try to explain and articulate the inconsistency in your own worldview.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be honest. Some people are bothered or offended or uncomfortable with men dressing up as women, drag, etc., and they're just not uncomfortable with young men being around sexualized females, right? That is true of some people. Yeah. They just don't like the other thing, and they're fine with that.
Yeah.
We did want to play a little bit of, so Taylor Lorenz did.
Basically, that's the end of what I wanted to react to, but I thought that Briahna just really hammered home the final blow there by pointing out, well, what about all this other shit that you claim to care about, but seemingly suspiciously don't get as worked up about? And not just Robby, but everyone on the right wing who kind of feeds into these ginned up moral panics. It's always some ginned up moral panic on the right wing, and then you'll bring up other examples of similar stuff in society, for example, like the Hooters thing, and then they'll say, well, I care about that too, I also am against that. It's like, yeah, but you're not spending half your fucking time bloviating about what a problem it is and feeding into this moral panic that's clearly just been ginned up by the right wing, the reactionary right wing, in order to demonize an already massively marginalized community.